Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our expert Q&A brought to you by Neil and Kyo Kiran. I'm Katrina Call, the Executive Director of the Brian Grant Foundation. You may know that we provide tools to improve the well-being of people with Parkinson's disease. If you haven't yet visited our website at briangrant.org, I encourage you to do so after today's presentation. For those of you who have joined our live streams and our webcasts previously, you may have noticed that we're using a new live stream service. If you bookmark this page, avcast.me/bgflive, you can come back here for each of our monthly webcasts every second Wednesday of the month at 12 p.m. PT. We are hopeful that by using this one page, it will make it easier for everyone to join. So please do bookmark this page and join us back here next month for our next expert Q&A. We still encourage you to register so you receive the notifications so that you know that the webcast is coming up, but this is the page that we will be using for our monthly expert Q&As moving forward. And now I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Delaram Safarpour, Assistant Professor of Neurology at Oregon Health and Science University, who will be discussing Parkinson's nutrition with us today. During Dr. Safarpour's presentation, you can submit your questions through the chat function for a moderated Q&A toward the end of the hour. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Safarpour. Welcome, Dr. Safarpour.
Thank you for that introduction, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone, and very nice to have you virtually. My name is Delaram Safarpour. I'm one of the movement disorders specialists at OHSU, and it's my pleasure today to talk to you about nutrition and Parkinson's disease. This is definitely one of the topics that all of my patients talk to me about the very first session when we diagnose them and as we continue to follow up throughout the years. This is one thing that I always tell them when we first diagnose that, nutrition is a prescription for you. You should definitely think of it as a prescription, definitely be proactive in choosing the right ingredients, because what you really eat really defines how well you will feel. So pay more attention to making the appropriate food for yourself, and you will see how the outcomes will actually be much better. The second prescription that we always talk about, and I'm not going to focus on this talk, is exercise. So if you do these two things very well, you will naturally not ask the question of what can I take, what medicine can I take for neuroprotection, because these two are your neuroprotective therapies. So I'm hoping at the end of this talk, after we go through some grocery shopping together, you will learn some strategies to improve your grocery shopping list and to pay more attention to cooking a healthier meal for yourself. So let's start by, again, asking why it matters. Why does it matter why we eat? And the truth here is that it really matters because we think that the process of Parkinson's disease actually starts in the gut. We know from the very large clinical trials, very large studies that looked retrospectively in people who had Parkinson's disease, that these people 20 years before onset of their Parkinson's motor symptoms, they had symptoms like constipation. And so constipation is very much related to future development of PD. However, I want to pause here and say not everyone who has constipation will develop PD, but most of patients who developed motor symptoms in the past did have constipation. And nowadays, one of the major theories that we have in development of Parkinson's disease is that it actually starts in the gut. Something goes wrong, something that we're exposed to, something that we eat, some wrong mechanism that happens that changes the microbiome in the GI tract from anti-inflammatory or good environment to pro-inflammatory or bad environment for the GI tract. And during that bad mechanism, the gut becomes quote unquote leaky. When it becomes leaky, the poisons from whatever we were exposed to or whatever we ate find their way to sip through the lumen of the GI tract to the blood and through the vagus nerve into the brain. So there the mechanism starts, and there the motor symptoms start. So it really matters what we eat. And although we really haven't found that special bacteria that makes things worse yet, there are lots of studies on that, it makes sense that by knowing that it actually stores in the GI tract, if we eat healthier, we can make the microbiome stronger, better, and more antioxidant and more anti-inflammatory, and therefore perhaps create a neuroprotective strategies in help reducing the motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So what you eat can be neuroprotective. So then the question becomes, what should we eat? Several of the clinical trials that look at microbiome actually look at quality of life as one of the outcomes. And what will happen if people start eating healthier? People will be happier, people will be lighter, people will exercise better, people will be less depressed. So these are all the changes that you will see in your quality of life with a healthier diet. Another important thing that I'm going to get into briefly at the end of this talk is not only what you eat, definitely what you eat is really matter, but also how you eat it is very important too. And so we're going to talk about how the art of eating can be an art of meditation, and how we should look at it while we put so much effort in creating a colorful and spiceful plate. Now, how should we eat it? That's another important part. So with that, I want to invite you to, let's try and see, if you go grocery shopping, let's just go through the aisles together and see what are the types of food that we should go for and what should we try to avoid. Try to avoid highly processed food, the food that maybe it's just really oily and fatty and highly processed. Try to go through those aisles faster. You don't need anything from there. Try to get to more colors and more spices. And in fact, if you haven't tried before, try to think of it as a new adventure to go through spices of different cultures. Nowadays, if you can find even grocery shops from different cultures, Indians, from Middle Eastern supermarkets, that you can find different spices that you haven't tried before, and you can add it to your diet and make it more colorful and more, enjoyable for yourself. A lot of times I hear questions about what kind of supplements should we buy? What supplements should we take every day? And in fact, a lot of times I see a lot of patients for the first consult that when they come in, they don't have any medications on their list, but they have 3 pages of different supplements. All these supplements, you can find them in a good, healthy diet. So instead of spending money on all those supplements, you can easily spend more money on fresh fruits and vegetables and spices and get all those ingredients that you are taking. For example, often turmeric is one of the great supplements that I see a lot of patients take, but you can get it in as a spice. If you're preparing a salad for yourself, if you're sauteing a little onion for yourself with olive oil, why don't you add a good amount of turmeric to it, make it colorful, and make your salad a little more enjoyable, but using something that you haven't tried before. In fact, turmeric doesn't have that much taste, but has a lot of good colors. And definitely with Parkinson's disease, as we lose our taste and sense of smell, we don't enjoy the food that we used to in the past as much anymore. But if we make the plate look really enjoyable and appealing, that will become something that we like to enjoy and we like to try as a new adventure, as I said. As a side, always try to have some fruits, vegetables, try to add different types of seeds and beans and legumes to your salads. And as I said, make it more enjoyable. Now, there are studies to show that people who eat more leafy green vegetables, they have better cognition. So if you're thinking about a neuroprotective supplement that you often see that different drug companies advertise, that if you take, for example, this product, you will have better cognition. There hasn't really been any study to support that. And actually, this was bad enough that FDA gave them some advice to take out those advertisements because those were not right. Whereas we know that those who eat more nuts and leafy vegetables, those will have better cognition over time. So this is easier and definitely much cheaper. So why not try these ones? And leafy greens like spinach, romaine lettuce, all of these, if you haven't tried them in your salad, try different ones that that you can find easily on a lot of different supermarkets. Oh, I passed the slide. Another very good source of fiber are beans. And there's a variety of different beans out there that we haven't tried yet. If you try different forms of beans, you will find one that you like a lot, especially if you have a diet that is not rich enough in protein. You can easily add some beans to your diet, and that can be a good source of protein for you. And there are a variety of great recipes out there using beans. For example, I'm just going to go ahead and give you a recipe here. With the red beans, you can add a little bit of the, like a handful of red beans and some water and let it cook. Add some onion to it, a little bit of salt and pepper and turmeric, and let it cook for an hour or so. Add a little bit of tomato to it, real tomato, not tomato paste. And there you will have a very, very delicious meal that you will enjoy. And you can add different spices that you found on the other aisles that you liked to it and make it more enjoyable. Definitely add a little bit of olive oil or even vinegar. That would be really good. Now, let's take a break and ask you a question. I know, well, if we were all in one room, I could ask you to raise your hands and try and answer this question. But let's all see what you think about weight loss and weight gain. Definitely both can happen in Parkinson's disease. Weight loss, though, is much more common. And the reason for that is sometimes with Parkinson's disease, we have extra movements like tremor or dyskinesia, involuntary movements that people can have. And these will consume more energy. And if you consume more energy, you will, or calories, you will lose weight. That can be one reason. Another reason can be because of in more advanced stages of the disease, you can have problems with swallowing dysfunction, or even fear of choking, and that will prevent eating a complete portion of a meal, and therefore you will have a weight loss. As I said a minute ago, another reason for it would be that you don't have a sense of a smell and taste that you had before. So again, that meal doesn't really look appealing to you anymore, and you don't want to try it. And that could be another reason. And I always used to talk about this and never knew this firsthand until I had COVID and lost my sense of smell and taste. And sure enough, that same plate that I always made myself, and I was proud that this is a great dish, didn't smell or taste the same. So I didn't like it anymore. So I can totally relate and understand how hard this can be. One of the strategies that you can use, as I mentioned, is that you can make your plate look very appealing. You can add a little more spices that can stimulate your taste buds more. If you know this recipe by heart and you only need this much pepper, maybe add a little more pepper. Maybe that can help stimulate your taste buds a little more. Or while you're eating it, again, art of eating, while you're eating it, think about a good memory that is associated with that dish. For example, you had that meal with a friend or a family member that you really liked, and this brings back how it should smell or how it should taste. Our brain is really fascinating how every memory is connected to a smell or a certain taste even. You probably know from a time in your life that you were walking on the street and you suddenly smelled something, and that brought on a very remote memory that you wouldn't otherwise think of. So everything is all connected. And if you can think of a good memory that is associated with that plate, that can help a lot by reminding you what is this dish supposed to smell and taste like, and that way you are more interested in eating it. Again, in more advanced stages of the disease, I tell my patients, think of it as a prescription. We can't afford to continue to lose weight, because that way you don't have the energy to even exercise. Your walking will be harder. You will always have more and more fatigue. Things will be harder. You will have worse constipation. So you have to think of it as prescription, smaller portions, but eat more frequently during the day. Weight gain can also be a problem in Parkinson's disease. How can that be a problem? When taking medications, like, for example, dopamine agonists, like pramipexole, ropinirole, Nupro patch, which is a patch but in the same family, people can be a bit compulsive. Other medications too can make you compulsive. Even higher doses of levodopa can make you compulsive. But compared to dopamine agonists, the likelihood of compulsive behavior with the rest of the medications is a little lower. Compulsive eating is very common, both in men and women, perhaps a bit more common in women. Eating or snacking in the middle of the night is very common, especially in men. Sometimes I tell my patients that if your spouse wakes up several times at night and feels that he or she's interested more and more in finding out what's going on in the refrigerator, put a little lock on it, that the cafe is closed after 12, you can't eat anything else. And that way you can help by reducing the likelihood of weight gain. So that's with the weight. Moving on, I want to make sure we all know about fruits and vegetables. And probably one of the better fruits are berries, different forms of berries. And we should try them all to find out which ones are the ones that we actually like. These are excellent sources of anti-inflammatory compounds, and these are sources that will improve the microbiome into an anti-inflammatory environment that can be good for both motor movements, cognition, and how you feel. You should try them all and try and find out which one is better for you. They're all colorful, and some of them smell really good too. One of the things that we teach patients in meditation with eating is that while trying different berries, for example, raspberry or blackberry, one of the things that you want to do is you want to hold one of them in your hand and you want to touch it, you want to feel it, and you want to think about how it should smell. If you can smell it, that's great. If you can't think about how it should smell, then put it in your mouth and try to swallow it slowly. That way you will not only enjoy it, but also will have all the benefits of remembering the taste and smell of that fruit as well. When they're not available, when the fresh ones are not available, frozen fruits are also fine. Dried berries, dried fruit are also fine, but be very careful because when you're going through the aisles, there are berries and dried fruit that are great, but they have added sugar to them. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to the ingredients and make sure that they don't have added sugar if you're buying dried. They're excellent for constipation if you have constipation. Now, how about fat? Should we eat any fat at all, or fat is bad, period? No, we need fat. We need fat for better absorption of all the healthy things that we're eating. If you read the Mediterranean diet suggestion, they suggest that you should use extra virgin olive oil and a good amount of it as well. You should apply it to your salads. And that definitely helps a lot, not only with absorption, but also with constipation. One of the things that I always encourage my patients to do is if you should try and make your own salad dressing. Sometimes we think that we're doing great by eating salad every day, all meals, but still we're gaining weight because you're using the dressing that's inside the salad packet. That's the mayonnaise and then all those bad ingredients that has just saturated fat in it. So put that aside, make your own salad dressing. Use virgin oil, use different types of seeds, definitely flax seeds that are a very good source of protein. They're a very good source of fiber, and walnuts, sunflower seeds. These are very good for constipation as well. And are great sources of antioxidants for you. Another very good question is, what should we do with meat? Should we eat meat at all or not? Should we buy any sort of meat at all or not? What I always tell my patients, whether the question is meat, whether the question is ice cream, whether the question is lots of different forms of chocolate, I always say, it's all about how much you enjoy life. So enjoy your life by eating what you like, but moderation. The life is all about moderation. You don't want to eat red meat every day if we all already agreed on that this red meat is almost like poison. This red meat is not good for you, not good for your GI tract, not good for your cognition, not good for your kidneys. So in general, not good. But if you totally love your steak and you enjoy it, we don't want that to be a memory. Do eat it when you want to, but just once in a while, and give it to yourself as a gift for being super healthy the rest of the time. There's some little studies here and there that says eating too much chicken actually makes tremor worse. These are not confirmed, but I always tell my patients, maybe try it. Just avoid chicken and see if your tremor gets better. But in general, the better form of meat would be meat from fish. If you like meat, eat fish. And a better high in omega-3 fatty acid fish would be salmon, anchovies, sardines. These are very good fish that you can make. Make sure that you can broil them. Try to avoid using too much, burning it while you're just saute it briefly, or just put it in the oven, barbecue it. But don't, because a lot of different forms of olive oil, you don't want to burn it too much. Use it while you're cooking, but do not want to burn it because that will lose its antioxidant effect. So again, preparing fish also is an art, and you can easily put it in a higher levels of your oven and just over like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, broil it, add a little bit of pepper or different spices that you like. There's no way you can make salmon taste bad, really. And if you totally hate fish, you don't want to eat fish, you don't like salmon, and you're looking for some omega-3 source, you can then take the supplements that are algae-derived fatty acids, because salmon doesn't make omega-3 itself. It eats the algae that is high in omega-3, and so you can get yours from those kind of supplements. They're probably expensive. So the next one, and this is the area that is closer to my research and my research interest, is probiotic, prebiotic. What should we do? Because as you go through those aisles in Whole Foods or any other store, they're pretty expensive. How much should we spend money? Should we buy any probiotics at all or not? I invite you to turn that can back and look at the ingredients. They may have one or two probiotic ingredient that's good, but a lot of them have added sugar. A lot of them have other ingredients that are not actually that good for you. So let me take a step back and actually explain what's prebiotic and what's probiotic. Prebiotics are the natural things that you eat, the fruits and fibers, all the great things that you eat in your healthy diet that become food for the good bacteria in your microbiome. What's microbiome? Microbiome is the millions and trillions of bacteria that live in our gut. So sometimes we can have very good diet. We can create a great environment in our gut, and good bacteria start growing more, and then we will feel healthier and healthier. Whereas we can eat a lot of processed food, and bad bacteria will grow. And that's where we talk about pro-inflammatory environment. That's where we're talking about leaky gut. That's where we're talking about worsening of symptoms. So if you eat a diet that is healthy in prebiotics, which all the things that we talked about right now, great vegetables, fruits, berries, nuts, you will have enough material for your good bacteria to grow and have a healthy gut. Then you do not need probiotics. You do not need to buy or spend any money on probiotics at all. So that question will dissolve. Do we need probiotics or not? We need prebiotics. We need all those great vegetables and things that we talked about. We don't necessarily need probiotics. There are some studies that looked at different probiotics and whether taking probiotics will improve motor symptoms. We haven't found any probiotic that will slow progression or will improve motor symptoms in Parkinson's disease. That's why our recommendations will remain that eat a healthy diet and supply your gut and your gut bacteria with great, good prebiotic material. And then next important question is, now we're in a drink aisle. What should in terms of drinks we buy? First of all, during the day, drink plenty of water. Drink as much as you can, because this can help with constipation. This can help with low blood pressure. A lot of us are dehydrated, and that's why we feel dizzy when we stand up. However, it's important, especially if you wake up several times in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. We don't want an interrupted sleep either. So if you're waking up several times, you should limit your water consumption after a certain hour in the evening. Maybe after 7 p.m. don't drink water anymore. And one of the tricks that I usually tell my patients, those who wake up, this is not on topic, but just because I remembered right now, if you wake up several times at night to go to the bathroom, one of the things you can do is that an hour or two before going to bed, lay flat and put your feet up for half an hour. That way you will trick your kidneys into thinking you are in bed and you're asleep, and the kidneys will start working and clear the extra liquid that they don't need, and you'll go to the bathroom and then you go to bed. That way you avoid 1 or 2 trips to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So All with that saying, drink a lot of water. But what else can you drink? You should improve your water by adding a little bit tea to it, and definitely make sure that you're drinking unsweetened tea. Don't have tea that has a lot of sugar added or any sugar added to it. Different variety of tea can have very good antioxidant properties. Green tea, white tea, these are all great antioxidants, and you should drink different ones. Try and figure out which ones are your favorite. Fatigue is very common in Parkinson's disease. A lot of my patients will say that I'm just so fatigued during the day. One of the tricks that we can try and battle fatigue with is to drink 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and that's real coffee, not decaf coffee, and take a little nap mid-afternoon, wake up, drink a little black tea early afternoon, not late in the afternoon, not at 6 or 7, because that can cause insomnia, but early in the afternoon after you wake up, drink a little black tea. That will give you a boost of energy for your afternoon, but definitely 2 cups of coffee in the morning. And coffee is nothing but seed juice. So you're really drinking some good seed juice, and that will give you a boost of energy in the morning too, especially if you're going to an exercise class in the morning. Again, make sure that you don't add sugar or too much milk to your coffee. One of the things that studies have shown is that people who drink or eat a lot of dairy products, they have worse cognition. So that's one of the things that, again, moderation, a small amount, because that's also good for your gut health, but you don't want to take too much of it. Definitely less soda. Again, if you're someone who all their life has had soda and you love this drink, make that your bonus drink once a week, not more. The sugar and all the ingredients of sodas are bad for brain health, very bad for brain health. And also less fruit juice. Definitely fruit juice that you buy on the aisles that are not 100% natural and have added sugar, those are really bad for you. So avoid them. Those are bad for you, bad for your teeth. But if you say, no, but I make my own fruit juice, I still say, why are you wasting that great amount of fiber that can help for all your constipation? So you have this valuable thing in hand. You decide to just throw away half of its benefit and just drink this juice. Don't do that. Drink the whole fruit. Eat the whole fruit as a whole. That's beneficial. So we created a shopping list. We went through different aisles together. We made sure that we buy a good amount of all these legumes and fruits and coffee and drinks. Then we get to the chocolate part, and we really like chocolate. If you really like chocolate, make sure that you buy dark chocolate, at least 80% and higher, and not the ones that are full of sugar and really 40 or less coconut. We briefly talked about nuts and seeds as well. You want to make sure that you have a good amount of nuts and nuts in your everyday, everyday snack. So you can have some almonds, you can have some walnuts added to your salad, but definitely this is a great source for brain health that you want to make sure that you have some of it on your everyday diet. So I often have this question, whether the different types of food that we eat will have any effect on our Parkinson's disease symptoms. That's a very good question. We already talked about microbiome and how different food that you can eat can change the microbiome and make it a strong anti-inflammatory, strong, healthy microbiome, or a pro-inflammatory, which can potentially worsen your symptoms. Another important point that you want to pay attention to is the timing of eating food and taking your levodopa. Because if you take your food that is rich in protein right before taking your levodopa or together, then the food that's rich in protein will quickly go and get and sit on those receptors that were supposed to be free for levodopa to come and sit on them. And levodopa comes and goes, and before you know, it didn't work at all. So you want to make sure that you eat your food maybe an hour before taking your levodopa, or first take your levodopa and then 30 minutes later to eat food. And this may change with the progression of the disease, because with progression of the disease, we may need to take levodopa more frequently. And then if this becomes a struggle all the time for the patients, we try to come up with a way to just, remember what times you eat food, and try to rearrange your medications in a way that it's an hour before or after. But don't think too much about it, because that anxiety of thinking about it, that also becomes a separate struggle that changes quality of life. Another important thing is to remember that with progression of the disease in Parkinson's disease, our GI tract slows down. And as the GI tract slows down, your stomach will be a little lazier than before. If the stomach is a little lazier than before, it's not going to push the ingredients out to small intestine where it needs to be absorbed. So the food that you ate will go sit in your stomach, and you will have early fullness and belching and other symptoms that you didn't have before. So another thing to pay attention to is that if you eat a food that is really, really fatty, that can slow your gut a little bit more as well. And there, if you take your levodopa an hour after, that poor lazy stomach hasn't still worked on that food that you already ate an hour before. So it still may not work well. One of the things that I often tell my patients is try to eat in smaller amounts, but more frequently. Smaller amounts because we want to give the stomach a break to be able to process it and move it forward. So we don't have all those bad symptoms that I just talked about. So with all this balanced diet that you will eat, you will not only have good energy and good mood, but also it's going to boost your immune system as well. All these antioxidants are going to be a booster of our immune system, and in general, you will be healthier and be able to fight any other viruses or anything else much better. Now let's move on to the art of eating. One of the things that we always talk about is now we prepared that beautiful plate that's colorful, that's full of the spices, and now we're getting ready to eat it. Is there any specific ways we should eat it? We should remember that in Parkinson's disease, we have involvement of all parts of GI tract. And when we're talking about GI tract, we're talking about it starts in the oral cavity. It starts with production of saliva, swallowing, stomach, small intestine, and colon, and all parts of the GI tract can be involved. And if all parts are involved, you can have all these different symptoms. For example, you can have decreased production of saliva. And there's a caveat here, because you can say, oh, my spouse always has drooling and they have Parkinson's disease and they always have drooling. Why do you say that they have decreased amount of saliva? So the saliva actually, the production is actually decreased. What happens in Parkinson's disease is that we do not swallow the saliva as often and as frequently as we should. And also, because of the stiffness of the jaw, instead of closing the mouth, often the mouth is open. And so the accumulation of saliva in oral cavity and an open mouth, saliva will come out. One of the easy tricks that I usually tell my patients is that you can have a hard candy that's sugar-free, or a gum that's also sugar-free in your mouth. That will you remember to swallow your saliva more frequently and be less likely to have drooling. And if it progresses, there are other ways medically that we can treat it as well. But so we need a certain amount of saliva to be able to move the food bolus forward. So that is one problem. Then we need coordinated movements of different muscle groups in order to make sure that the food goes down to the right pipe. And then we have to have a very strong cough strategy or cough strength to be able to cough if it goes down to the wrong pipe. If the cough is also impaired, which can be, then you can have a condition called silent aspiration, which is the food or the drink going down the wrong pipe, and you don't have enough strength to cough, and you will have silent aspiration that can put you at risk of pneumonia. So it's really important to have every now and then have a speech and swallow evaluation. And what they do is that they will take pictures after you eat a certain amount of solid and liquids, and they make sure that it doesn't go down to the wrong pipe. And they will give you strategies to make sure that you are able to prevent silent aspiration. One of those good strategies is that, for example, if you're drinking, you don't want to drink and tilt your head back. In fact, what you want to do is that you want to drink from a cup, keep the liquid in your mouth, bring your chin to your chest, and then swallow. That way, you will prevent the liquid from going to the wrong direction. Another important thing is where to eat. Again, in the meditation associated with the art of eating, we often talk about if you have animals in the house, cats and dogs, put them in a different room. Don't eat in front of a TV that just happens to always have bad news. Turn the TV and radio off. If grandkids are around, maybe just try to put them in front of some toys or something that they are playing with, something else that they're not distracting you. If you have animals, put them in different room and sit upright and pay attention to the plates that you prepared or your spouse spent time in preparing for you. And make sure that you use the right utensils. The right utensils for example, someone who has tremor is weighted utensils that are a little heavier, that you can buy online, that they're literally called weighted utensils, and those can help with tremor a little bit. And maybe you have to bring the plate a little higher up if you have a posture that prevents from sitting upright, or if you have so much tremor that there's no way you can bring the spoon to your mouth. Bring the plate a little higher up. If you're going to eat smaller pieces of food, maybe eat them with a spoon instead of eating them with fork. So pay attention to all those details and stay focused while you're eating or drinking. And then after eating and drinking, make sure that you still stay upright for 30 minutes or a little longer if possible. Don't go lay down flat right after eating. It's important, it's helpful if you do exercises like yoga that will help with breathing, and also will strengthen the diaphragm. That's very important in breathing and also in digestion. You want to make sure that those muscles are strong. So a fair amount of exercise every day will help you. Breathing after eating, just like focusing on your breathing and staying upright will help you, and that way you can have better digestion. So we already talked about when to take levodopa, but one thing that I want to briefly go over is that some patients after taking levodopa with an empty stomach will have a lot of nausea. If you are one of those patients, I always suggest that you take your levodopa with a little bit of crackers or carbonated drinks. This will help with the nausea. If that doesn't help, ask your doctor to give you anti-nausea medication. During the day, because we want to make sure that the levodopa works very well, one of the newer strategies, protein redistribution strategy, tells us that maybe take your protein later in the day, in the evening. So during the day, your levodopa has time to work, and especially if you have lazy gut that's unpredictable and 1 hour may not be enough time for it, maybe you just take your protein completely to the evening where you're not as active as you are during the day, so your levodopa works better during the day. We already talked about this again. This is a question that I like to ask, and often patients will say stomach, sometimes they say colon. And as we said, all parts of the GI tract will be involved, and they will show their symptoms differently and should be treated differently. This is a famous picture that was taken in an endoscopy an hour after a patient took their Cinemeds. This is carbidopa levodopa, the yellow pill that the patient took an hour before the endoscopy. And when they did the endoscopy, this was the picture of the inside of the stomach that was taken through the endoscopy. And you can see that most of the pill is still sitting in a stomach and hasn't found its way to small intestine where it needs to be absorbed. So it would be a patient who will say, oh, I took my medication an hour ago and it hasn't kicked in yet, and that's the reason. Some tips for constipation: drink a lot of water, drink more coffee. Coffee is a natural stimulant and is a laxative and can help with constipation. Regularly exercise, that will help with constipation. Eat a lot of fiber. Make sure that your diet is rich in fiber. And definitely, if you're looking on the aisles, look for prunes. Prunes as a fruit, the fruit, not the prune juice, but the prune itself will be very helpful for constipation, along with flaxseed. And if you like to read yourself, these are several great books that you can look into. How Not to Die is my favorite, and you can look these books online and get more information about diet and Parkinson's disease. So with that, that would be the last slide that I have, Katrina. I'm sure there are some questions.
Yes, thank you. Great, thank you so much, Delaram. That was a great presentation. I appreciate a lot at the end the reminders about how to eat. I think we get through our busy lives, and sometimes we forget that sitting down and eating without distractions and focusing on what we're eating is really, really important. So thank you for that. We have a ton of questions, so I do definitely want to try to get to them before we get to the end of the hour. You know, the first question we had that came through at the beginning when you're talking about vegetables was, in terms of fresh or cooked vegetables, is one healthier? Does it matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. Fresh vegetables are always better. But if you're cooking your vegetables, make sure that you don't cook them for a very long time. Vitamin C, the ingredient in those vegetables, that's one of the major ones that we like, is very unstable, and you will not get a rich amount of vitamin C from your vegetables if you cook them for a long time. If you cook them for a short period of time, that's fine. either case, whether you cook them long or short, because some of the stews, you have to cook them very long, you will still get your source of fiber from them. But if you want all the great ingredients to be included if you're eating it, then cook it a little shorter.
Awesome. Awesome. So one question we had was, do you have any recommendations for someone if they get too tired to stand and cook and they live alone?
If they are, so yes, that's a very good point. Some of our patients live alone and they cannot cook for themselves. If they can afford, there are some great resources for cooking that I know several of my patients in Portland, especially, I know that there are some companies that will come and meet with you and find out what are the things that you need. These are nutritionists, and then their cook will go by and will come to your house, and of course they will charge per hour, but they will cook very healthy meals for a week for you. It's also helpful if you can find a family or family member or a friend that can support you in that way. Yeah.
I've also found that some partners of ours, like at Market of Choice, they do prepare fresh deli salads, and there are a lot of prepared foods that aren't in a container with a lot of preservatives. They've been prepared that day, and that you can usually go in and maybe find some things at the deli counter if that's helpful. Another question we received was, if somebody's taking a medication like warfarin that and they want to add leafy greens to their diet, and they're worried about vitamin K compromising the clotting response, do you have any ideas on that? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, there are some leafy vegetables that you're supposed to avoid with warfarin, but they give you a list of which ones to avoid. It's not all of them. You still can discuss it with your primary care and see which ones you really should avoid. It's not all of them.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for that. Somebody else also asked about salmon farmed from the Atlantic. And this is one we get a lot. We often refer people to the environmental working group. If people haven't been to that website, they often talk about pesticides and fish, and they produce lists of things that have that are less toxic than others. But I did want to throw this out to you. If you have any sense of whether salmon farmed from the Atlantic, is that still something that's good to eat?
I try to avoid answering that because I don't know enough about that. Okay. But if on your website there is a specific types of salmon that they should avoid because of pesticides that you mentioned, is that so?
I think it's, I'm not really sure about this particular question, but I do know that some people are concerned about mercury and other toxins like that in seafood. And that's why we also at the Brian Grant Foundation refer people to an organization called the Environmental Working Group, which produces lists of foods that are less likely to have toxic chemicals in them. And so I would just refer people to the Environmental Working Group on that. Somebody wanted to know, what is white tea?
Oh, white tea is probably what you can find it in any store. I think it's Japanese in origin, and it's full of antioxidants, and it's good for the gut health.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've seen white tea recently too. I didn't know about it either, but
and there are some that are that have some added pomegranate or other flavors to it that are really good actually. So generally we say if you're drinking water, maybe you can add a little bit of this to your water and make it taste even better.
Yeah, great. So thank you. They'd heard of green tea, they'd heard of black tea, but they hadn't heard of white tea. And I will say I am just newly learning about white tea as well. So thank you for that question. Does caffeine increase tremors?
Caffeine can increase some types of tremor. So when we're talking about tremor, everyone has tremor. So we have different thresholds though for showing that tremor. And it's interesting to know, I will show my tremor when I drink 3 cups of coffee or lose sleep. Someone else will have tremor when they drink 5 cups of coffee and some other triggers. But not everyone's response is the same. These are called enhanced physiological tremor. Essential tremor is notorious for having a bad response to caffeine. In fact, we use that as one of the diagnostic features of essential tremor. But in Parkinson's disease, it's less likely that the tremor will be affected by the tremor of Parkinson's disease is less likely to be affected by caffeine. And people often say that they get a good boost of energy with drinking it. However, I should say that there are a proportion of patients with Parkinson's disease that have both Parkinson's disease and essential tremor, both rest tremor and action tremor. And that specific group may be more vulnerable to worsening of tremor when they drink caffeine.
Great. Delaram, do you mind just, sorry, we'll come back to you in a sec, but somebody asked about nuts. Are there some nuts that are better than others? I know we had a little discussion going here where somebody said walnuts are at the top of the list because of omega-3s.
Yeah.
But do you have anything to say about nuts?
Yeah, walnuts in general, almonds and walnuts are generally the ones that, especially when they studied, they were asking people for those. Generally, nuts all are great, but these are the ones that we know more about, that they're rich in omega-3 and rich sources of fiber as well. But you also want, and fat as well. So you want to make sure though that you don't eat so much of them, because you can certainly gain weight by eating too much fat.
Yes, great. I'm so glad that
between not eating any nuts and choosing one that you like, I would say choose one that you like, right? But if you like walnuts, well, that would be the one that's preferable.
Okay, great. Yeah, nuts are great. So I'm glad that we had a chance to cover that, because I still meet people who think nuts aren't good for you because of the fat. And so it's nice that we're starting to change that idea.
Again, I always say moderation, moderation, moderation. So maybe a 4 or 5 servings per day, but you don't want to overdo it either. Even like water is great for us, but drink so much water and you will not be healthy, you know? So everything in moderation, and definitely a good amount of nuts has been shown to be neuroprotective for the brain, and we should definitely use that.
Awesome. Somebody asked about opposing views regarding protein from animals. So do you have a sense of, is it healthy to eat animal proteins, or is it unhealthy to eat animal proteins?
So in general, in the different diets, when you look at the animal proteins, they're not healthy for your heart, they're not healthy for your general health, and they're not healthy for your gut either. So I don't remember off the top of my head if there are any studies to show that there is any association with worsening of Parkinson's symptoms, but animal protein in general, not good for the health of heart and for especially for aging population.
Okay, great. It's same thing about gluten. We got the same question about gluten, and we get this a lot at the foundation as well. Do you have an opinion about gluten?
So gluten-free diet is a very hard diet. You can't say, I'll just take a little bit of gluten, right? Either gluten-free or not gluten, with gluten. Some people are gluten sensitive, so those are a different group of people that if you try to avoid gluten, that will be better. There are no studies to show a gluten-free diet is necessarily a neuroprotective or will improve health of got to the level that you go through the hardship of putting everything aside and stick to a gluten-free diet. So in general, again, I say plant-based diet is the best diet that you can have. If you can have that diet, that's the top best diet. And then if that's not possible, just to stick to a moderation of using the things that are not, for example, as I said, if you really have to have your steak, just once a month, maybe. If you have to have your soda once a month, but in general, try to stick to a more of a plant-based diet, more of a variety of vegetables and fruits and seeds and nuts. That will be healthy for you.
That's great, Delaram. And so we're coming to the end of the hour. We had some other questions, and what I want to let everybody know is we have recorded today's session. So it will be available on our website by the end of this week. So you can go back and see the slides and listen to Delaram's presentation. One of the questions we got was about your cookbooks. I will go back and send out an email letting everybody know the cookbooks that were on that last slide, but you also will be able to see all of the slides on our website in the recording of this presentation by the end of this week. I will also go through, I also love to hear from you guys. I know you had some great conversations happening today, so you can always get a hold of us at info@briangrant.org to let us know your thoughts on nutrition, let us know about the resources you're turning to. We're happy to hear from all of you. Please do let us know. And with that, I just want to thank you, Delaram, for being here today. It was an incredible presentation.
Thank you.
Really makes me want to go have a salad now. And I appreciate everybody for being here. And with that, thanks everyone. See you next month for our expert Q&A on the exercise recommendations for Parkinson's disease with Miriam Rafferty from Northwestern University. Thanks everyone. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.